Stop the fucking like trying to
There we
finish it
go.
off. I don't
Recording
ask
in
for help
progress.
or
That's
nothing.
what I was waiting for. All right. So I want to thank you for both being here in person and online. Tonight's talk, cause versus effect-centered care. So we're going to be looking at the two different philosophies that actually drive our health, wellness, sick care system. And I use those words on purpose so you can start understanding the different systems and how they actually work. First off, my ask is that we come with an open heart and an open mind. And I say this because tonight I'm going to start exposing you to some different philosophies on how people actually look at how your body functions. And now you're going to start understanding the different systems and how they work, and how if you go into certain systems, you'll get different forms of care. And it's based on the philosophy of how the body is actually perceived. Simplistically, the answer is reductionism or allopathic is one center, and the other one is vitalism and holism. So those are the two things that we're going to be looking at tonight. But when we start, I'm going to start by having us do a simple interactive experiment for us to actually play along and see how this actually runs out in your real life. So I know we may be writing, but we actually need to use both hands for this experiment. So what I want you to do is I want you to take your thumb. We got our thumbs, everybody?
Right, left.
Take whichever hand is your strong hand, use the other one. So if you're righty, use your left thumb. If you're a lefty, use your right thumb. Put it up, and then I want you to grab your thumb and hold it as tight as you can until you start making it change colors. You want to see it get purpley and change. So we're just going to look at this, and we're going to see that the thumb is going to start looking different. So my thumb right now is kind of more purple than my fingers because we're squeezing tight. So that's our goal, is to squeeze tight and actually feel the change. If it doesn't work on your thumb, you can do it on your index finger. But if we hold it, now we might start feeling some tingling. We might start feeling that there's some pressure building up in there when we're holding it. And you might noticing that it's changing colors. Another way to do this is an elastic band. I don't recommend that because you got to cut it off. So let's not do that. So let's just think of the symptoms that we're getting. So right now we're getting paresthesia, which means numbness. We're getting pain. We're getting swelling. We're getting rhubarb, which is the color changes. And it's all changing. Mine's getting kind of purple. Anybody else getting that kind of change? Yeah. And it might feel what? Getting cold. So we're seeing all these symptoms show up, right? Now, let's think about this. If I hold this long enough, the blood flow is going to go out and start hurting. So should I take Advil? Because I got pain.
No.
Well, why not? I got pain though.
Because that's not treating what's happening.
So I shouldn't do it because it's not what's treating what's happening. So I shouldn't take Advil. That's what one person says. So the next thing is, what about, the wrong page up. So it's not healing yet. So, it's swelling. Should I take an should I take a diuretic to get the swelling out? But it's swelling. And now, because the white blood cells aren't able to get there, I've had it like this for a while. Now it's getting fungal and bacterial infections. So we should definitely take an antibiotic and antifungal, right?
No.
No. Why not? What's the problem?
You're holding it too tight.
I'm holding it too tight.
Stop it.
Stop it. Okay. So now you understand what I feel like every time somebody comes into the office. So we let it go and it comes back to normal, right? So what was the effect? The effect was all the symptoms. What was the cause? I was actually pinching the blood flow off to my finger. That's the two ways of looking at things. What is the underlying cause? What is the effect? When you change the cause, the effect doesn't change instantaneously. It takes time. It can take years to grow the effect. What can the effect be? The effect can be that C word that everybody's scared of. It can be blood pressure issues. It can be ADD, ADHD. It can be any number of symptoms. Those are the effects of an underlying cause. And if we don't actually look at the cause and we only treat the effect, just like me holding onto my finger and treating it with pain meds, antifungals, bacterial stuff, antidiuretics, it's not actually going to change the underlying issue. Does this make sense? So we want to understand what is the underlying cause that's actually making us have these problems. I'm going to give you a simple answer. 90% of the time, it's stress.
Mm-hmm.
If you have, and I'll let you in on this secret too, if you have a genetic issue that's causing the problem, it'll show up before the age of 10. Let me say that again. If you have a genetic problem that's causing your issue, it'll show up before the age of 10. If you have it show up after that, it means your life turned on the gene expression. So gene expression, or expression of disease and dysfunction, and if you look into epigenetics, which means the study of above the genes, it shows that your life determines the expression of the problems. So if we look at this, what are lifestyle diseases? The number one cause of death in North America is cancer. It is a lifestyle disease. It means it's stress-induced. The number two is heart disease, stress-induced. Alzheimer's, diabetes, all these other things that are in the top 20 are all lifestyle. It means how we live makes the disease. Say that again. How we live makes the disease. So your lifestyle, your stress response, then turns on the gene that makes the disease. That means your lifestyle can turn off the gene that makes the disease.
Oh.
Let's hear that other way. Your lifestyle can turn it off or turn it on. So it's an easy one. I live in a room that's full of cigarette smoke every day of my life. Am I more prone to getting lung disease, lung cancer, emphysema? Yes. But it's my experience of the environment that's external. Most people, when they think of causal things, they think only of environmental. And they miss the big kahuna in the area, which is the gorilla in the room, or the elephant, which is stress. The problem is when we get into healthcare, we get, and it's truly sick care in our country, is that we get a bunch of blind people feeling around on an elephant and they all tell you what they feel and they're 100% correct on what they feel. It's just they miss the whole picture. So if you have a person who only looks at the tail, then everything's about it being skinny and having little hairs on it. If you look at somebody who only looks at the leg, it only has one certain aspect, or the trunk, it only has one certain aspect. So what does this look like in our supposed healthcare system? This is a nephrologist, a cardiologist, a ENT. These are people that look at only simple individual systems and they don't look at the whole system. Make sense? So you're literally having all these people looking at individual things, but nobody's actually stepping back and going, how's the whole thing working? How's the whole system reacting? This is the problem, is that instead of us saying, what are we doing in our life that is causing XYZ outcome, we're saying XYZ outcome we need to treat with a pill, potion, or lotion, make the symptom go away. And in North America, if you go to the hospital, your MD, your DO, their job is to make the symptom go away. It is not to figure out what caused it. I need you to understand that. Their job is to make your symptom go away. If you go in and you're having an anxiety attack and they give you a benzo and your anxiety goes away, they did their job.
You're still squeezing the thumb.
Exactly. You're still squeezing the thumb because you didn't get to the actual underlying problem.
Exactly.
But they did their job because their job is symptom treating. I need you to understand that. So when people come in here and I start talking about underlying causational things, like say head injuries from 15, 20 years ago, blood sugar dysregulation, cortisol releases, food intolerances. They go, well, hasn't anybody else talked to me about this? And it's because they're not trained to look at it that way. They're trained to make the symptom go away. That's causation, that's effect-based care. You make the symptom go away, you did your job. And when you understand that, then you cannot expect anything else from that provider. If you're trying to get something else, that's like you speaking to somebody who can only speak English and Latin and they don't understand what you're saying. That's what's happening. They cannot understand you because their job is to make the symptom go away. It is not to actually make the function change. So take the drug, feel better, excellent, you're doing better. Oh, with all the downstream side effects of brain rotting, decay, all that, that doesn't matter because the symptom went away. Whereas if you look at causational, you want to go, what is the underlying issue? The person has, let's say, memory issues. Is it the fact that they were abused as a child? Is it the fact and they have suppressed emotional trauma, so they have PTSD? That would show up on our EEG. Is it the fact that they're not doing well with a relationship, so they don't know how to process that? Is it that they had a head injury? Is it that they're eating crappy food all day that comes out of a Doritos bag and that's all they eat? Is it chemical stress? Do they live near a nuclear power plant? Do they live right near the highway and they're getting all this benzene rings from the gases coming out of the cars? Do they live in a house that has high mold exposure? Does it have that moist smell? Like what are the number of things that could cause it? Are they predisposed to having autoimmune where they have a gene expression called HLA-DQ that can be turned on by the stress expression in their life? Yeah, it could be all those things. But we have to actually look at what's going on to figure out how to help them. We have to actually do an in-depth test to figure out what's actually going on to know how to actually help the person. In our office, we look more at inflammatory functional med stuff, make sure that all that inflammation is down, then train the brain to function correctly, and we'll watch them heal. If it's an underlying emotional trauma, we talk about this in our office as a cathartic release or a breakthrough. This is when that emotion will come up, the expression will happen, and that's when we need you to go to a therapist. That's when we need you to find somebody who's stable to help you process this trauma. And that's why we tell you ahead of time, if you've had major physical, sexual, or emotional abuse, we highly, highly, highly recommend that you co-manage with a therapist because we will help you open Pandora's box and then you'll be able to get through it. But the underlying issue that is completely, it's starting to see more, but is a lot of the time poo-pooed in Western medicine is, the emotion really has nothing to do. It's all chemistry. It's all physics. And I need you to understand where this started is during, don't quote me on this, I only remember in generality, so I can't give you the exact time frame or who it happened with, but it happened when the church started coming after science and said, either you leave this alone and the spiritual or brain part of the body is ours and the body itself is yours. So that separation of the brain and the body happened, I think it's like the 1200s or whatever, maybe during the Inquisition time. I can't remember specifically. I heard a talk on this. And what happened was the body then became mechanistic because the brain was removed. The spirituality was removed. And so that's what we're seeing in medicine is that we have a lot of mechanistic viewpoints because we've removed the spirit. We've removed the brain. We've removed connection. We've removed that innate intelligence. So when you're looking for a provider, you have to figure out which kind of provider are you looking for. And this is important because most people don't even know there's different philosophies or thought processes on how to find a provider. When you're looking for somebody who is going to do a holistic or vitalistic approach, you have to look for somebody who is literally a vitalism, and that's what chiropractors are. We're vitalists and holists. It means we're looking at the whole body, and we know that if the brain functions correctly and the body can respond correctly to the brain, the system will actually heal itself. But just as we did with our thumb, how quickly does it take for that thumb to actually have those symptoms go away? It's not instant. And if you do it long enough, you'll get damaged tissue. So it takes time to allow the system to work correctly to actually regrow yourself. That's why I talk about that 9-month time frame. How long does it take for our body to remake all the tissue besides our brain and spinal cord? 9 months. On the other hand, if you're looking for somebody who's going to be more mechanistic, then you go to your MD, DO, your medical provider. And you're going to notice they're more mechanistic. Because when they take care of you, they're looking at it and they say, okay, you have this symptom, I want it to go away. I'm going to give you a chemical to alter the way the thing works. So it's mechanistic. Instead of, well, why do you have this? What's happened in your life? Well, that's also based on the fact that they have shortened time frames. They have to get everything done in a certain time. Based on, this is what's interesting, if you want a medical provider that will do this, you have to find a practitioner that doesn't work in a hospital, because then they can make their own time frame. If they work in a hospital, they're dictated by their bosses. They have to be done with each person in 15 minutes. So you'd have to find a practitioner that doesn't work in a hospital, and then you may be able to get more time out. And they're going to look at it and go, okay, you have XYZ pain here. Let's just cut it out. Let's do a surgery. Instead of, it could be an underlying emotional thing causing a referred reaction. It could be a fact that you are consuming large amounts of alcohol every day and your liver is causing a referral pain to your right shoulder. It could be the fact that you're living near the freeway and you're exposed to benzene and it's causing your lungs to hurt and then you get back pain all the time. It could be multiple things. But when they do their history, you'll look at it, it's very mechanistic as well. Any falls, any trips, any very mechanical interactions. Does it make sense? And then when you understand who you're going to, you understand, well, I don't go to the mechanic and ask him to look at electricity. So you don't go to the mechanic, which is your medical doctor, and ask him to look at electricity. And that's what we run into. And when they don't quite understand what we do because they're not looking at it the same. They're not looking at the whole vitalistic system and understanding that if you put in impulses, it can adapt, heal, and actually put out proper intake and input and output. They look at it as a mechanism that once the system's broken, it stays broken. So you'll hear things like, well, you're going to have this for the rest of your life. We commonly hear that all the time. Well, you had Raynaud's, so you're eventually going to have an autoimmune disease. Or you had this, so you're eventually going to get this. That's because the assumption is that the underlying software isn't going to change. And the difference with our bodies is that when you change the software, the hardware changes. That means your body will actually change. The tissue will actually regrow itself correctly. The liver will regrow and heal. The kidneys can regrow and heal. The body can actually have the immune system boost to a right level so it can find bad cells, cancer cells, and actually get rid of them. And the body can actually heal itself. It's just not overnight. And that's what we've been tricked into believing, is that I have a symptom, I want it gone now. That's a drug. That's a surgery. But the long-term effects of that are far-reaching. Most people aren't aware that the most detrimental thing you can have done to your body is actually surgery. So a surgery is chemical trauma because we have the anesthetic, emotional trauma because we're going into an event that we're not able to control, we're not aware of, we can be knocked out. And then physical trauma because we're being cut open and things are being taken out, put in. We've all heard about crazy things happening. Long ankles and arms being operated on, all these different things. So we have all that happening, and then people get them repeatedly done. And then they wonder why they keep getting worse. They're literally inducing trauma over and over and over again. And we know it takes a long term to work through these things, but we're literally seeing it over and over and over and over being induced. Does it make sense? So what you want to do is look at, what kind of provider do I want? Do I want somebody who's going to tell me inherently your body is flawed, it's your genes, and it's not going to get better? Because that's what you hear. If you understand what they're telling you, that's what you hear. And if you ask a question, it's just the way it is. There's no answer given. It's just the way it is. Or do you want somebody who will communicate with you? You want somebody who will take the time to explain it to you. And it's sad for me because I have patients come in, they've had MRIs, CTs, X-rays, different things, that blood work done. Nobody explained anything to them. And it only takes 5-10 minutes. You can literally tell them, this says this, and this, and they've never had that done to them. So do I want to look at it as a whole? Is the brain working? Are all the systems communicating correctly? Understand that your body has an intelligence in it called innate or inborn that can literally heal you. And that's the thing I ask people. Do you know your body can heal itself? I'm asking you, do you guys know? Yeah. Then why hasn't it happened? And it hasn't happened because we've literally been in the wrong environment. So an example of this is this. If we have fish in a lake, and all of a sudden the fish start growing 3 eyes, what do we think? Pollution. We think pollution right away, right? Do we think they have a genetic anomaly? No. So we know you put bad stuff into water, fish grows 3 eyes, frog grows more eyes, frog grows more things. But yet for some reason, we think we can eat junk, not move, live in an environment that now bombards us with electromagnetic radiation, bad smoke and smog, and then we say it's a gene problem. But it's not. It's just an environmental problem. Now, are we going to be able to change that right away? No. So what we need to understand is my goal is to make you more adaptive. You live in the city, we got to make your liver really strong because you're going to be exposed to crap all the time. You live in the country, we might not have to do that as much. Are there things that we can modify to help us so we don't make ourselves sick? Yeah, we can modify the foods we eat. We can modify the environment we're in. But the big one is can we modify the thought processes that we have? What's our underlying belief system? Is it that I'm good, I'm healthy, I'm vibrant, I'm beautiful? Or is it that I'm broken, I'm flawed, and I'm going to get sick? What do we tell ourselves repeatedly? Just ask, and when you find this out, you'll start understanding where you're going. So this isn't directly correlated to this, but I'm going to show you how the thought process works. So in Harvard, the MBA class, I believe it was 1980, they did a survey. And in the survey, they said, how many of you set goals? And of the whole class, 5% of them did it. And then how many of you set goals and have time frames related to that? And in the whole class, 1% didn't. And in the whole class, that 5% made, I believe it was 95% of the wealth of the whole class. And the other 90% only made 5%. So those goals give you ways to go. So that inner monologue that you have tells you what you're going to go towards. I'm healthy, I'm wealthy, I'm going towards health and wellness. Whatever it is for you, is where you're going to go. Or I'm broken, I'm sick, I'll never get better. What are we telling ourselves? And I need you to understand that inner monologue will literally drive inflammation. So it's called a psychosomatic disease, which means that if you tell yourself you're sick long enough, you can literally change the inflammatory response in the body. Just like I talked about, babies will respond to in utero stress. When they hear it outside, they'll go into a fight or flight response. You will as well. If you tell yourself you're sick long enough, you can literally make yourself sick. And I'll give and the more will you have, the quicker you'll do it. Just as if you tell yourself you're healthy and you're working toward it, you will help yourself. You will literally change the neurology. You'll change the chemical reactions. So I was in college working at a bottling plant, and I didn't want to be there that day. It was Thursday and all my friends were going out. So I told myself I was sick all morning, to the point where I vomited in the plant and got sent home. And within 10 minutes of being outside of the room, I was fine. That's how powerful your brain is. That's just me doing it to myself. So I'm telling you this because your underlying belief system about who you are and what you can do will drive a lot of who you are. And you'll know what you believe about yourself when you get sick. Is it my body was stressed out because I had all these things happening and all this happening and I was exposed to this and this and I didn't get enough sleep and that's why I got sick? Or is it I'm genetically flawed, I'm going to be sick, I'm going to get sick over time and I'm just going to die? Is it that you have an intelligence in you and you can heal yourself? Or is it you are just an automaton robot and all that's controlling you is just you reacting to the environment? What's running you? This will drive you into, are you the effect of the world around you or are you the cause of your own health? And you can make choices here. Your choices are going to determine what you're going to do. Am I going to do something simple? Is eating an apple a day literally going to keep the doctor away? And actually, the more I learned, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
So the apple has high potassium levels. It literally puts out autoimmune responses, has high pectin levels, which will grow short chain fatty acids, has high fiber content. It will actually make you grow the right bacteria. That's all from an apple. So yeah, the old adage, an apple a day keeps the doctor away, isn't a lie. My grandfather had type 1 diabetes, and it was interesting. I learned this, that if you have type 1, which is an autoimmune, one of the ways to fight it is to take large amounts of potassium. Guess what he did every day for 30 years? He drank fresh squeezed apple juice, apple cider that he made. And when they tested him, they said, your potassium's too high. You can't do that anymore. And when they had him stop drinking that, within 6 months, he was not with us anymore.
Oh, wow.
It literally was the apple cider that he was drinking that was stopping him from getting sick. Isn't that crazy? Just a simple thing like that. Simple thing like, what do I focus on? Am I focused on growth and success? And that doesn't mean life works out perfect and everything's okay. What you focus on, you get more on. So what you think about, you'll get more of. If you want to feed yourself more toxins, talk about how sick you are. If you want to feed yourself more health, even if you're not healthy, talk about where you're going to be. And this will actually change your perspective. Well, if I want to be healthy and vital, what does that look like? Oh, well, then I'm going to have to eat this way. I'm going to have to move this way. I'm going to have to think this way. Maybe I shouldn't drink this thing or eat this thing. And it will literally change your outcome because now you have a different North Star. And it's just a mindset shift. It's not a big thing, but it's a radical thing. When you do 1 degree every day, all of a sudden you're 180, 360 from where, 180 from where you were before. So when we look at this, we need to understand, are we going to understand that we are a victim of our genes and we have no control over it, which is being disproven? Epigenetics proves that what you think, what you say, what you do, what you eat determines your gene expression. To the point where they've shown in twin studies, one twin lives one way, they get all these diseases, the other one doesn't. Same genes. So that's not true. It's how do we live, how do we think, how do we react to the environment? That determines how healthy we're going to be. I'll tell you one other study and then we're going to be done. There's a family, both sides of the family had heart disease. So they didn't want heart disease to happen in their child, so they adopted a child who had no heart disease on either sides of the family. Child grows up, by the time the child's 30, they have heart disease. Why did this happen? The habits the family have were transferred to the child. the child's habits are what drew the heart disease, not the genes. And if it's the genes, you're going to have it by 10. So if you're over the age of 10, you don't have anything, it's a lifestyle thing. Then you just got to figure out, what is your stress? Is it cognitive? Most people it is. Emotional, cognitive, all that stuff falls in the same thing. Is it what we're eating or drinking or being exposed to? Or are we doing something repeatedly to hurt ourselves through the way we move or the way we sit? Chemical, emotional, physical. Those things will drive your health. That means the cause of your problem is actually you. That means the health can be you as well. That means you're in charge. Instead of you're just the victim. I'm sorry, you're just gonna have to learn to live with it. That's empowering. That means you're in charge. But it also means you're in charge. And you got to decide what you want to do. And what I recommend is, if you can do what's right 80% of the time, you're allowed to screw up 20% of the time and you're still winning. As long as you're not screwing up big and like, I'm just going to go do meth one day a week and then not do. No, that's something too big. But if you're like, no, I can eat really well for these so many days and I can have one cheat meal, perfectly. Make sure you exercise, do whatever, and you'll be okay. So take that into heart when you are looking at your friends and family members. Like, well, I just don't understand why this doctor doesn't understand. It's because they don't want to understand. Their goal is to get rid of your symptom.
Mm-hmm.
When you understand that, then you understand why they want to cut things off, why they want to give you things. Making sense?
Yes.
So if you have a friend or family member and they want to know more, send them to a provider like me. We can do vitalistic interpretation, see what's going on with the brain, see what's going on with the blood work, and be able to give them feedback so they actually understand what's going on, feel empowered, and then can make choices instead of either get it cut out or I can't do anything for you.
So how do you describe what you do to a layperson?
How would we describe it?
Why is what you do here different from a doctor? Let's say a medical doctor. How do you describing yourself to a person like me?
The question is, how would I describe what I'm doing instead of a medical doctor?
Right.
I'm going to look at the underlying cause instead of the symptom. You have anxiety?
No, I'm
Yeah.
saying, what's the actual term?
It's vitalism.
Vitalism.
Vitalism and holism. And a medical doctor is reductionism and mechanism. It means they look at you as a machine that's eventually going to break down. And that's just how the body is. Whereas I'm a vitalist and a holist, so I say the whole system works as it's supposed to, and if it's working correctly, it's supposed to live to at least 120 and show no signs of decay. We just have to figure out where the dysfunction is that's causing the issue. So it's looking at you, you have the ability to heal, whereas the medical system looks at you more as you're a robot that's going to break down and fall apart. And your genes determine how long you can.
Holistic and functional, does that also is functional?
Holistic is looking at the whole. Vitalism means that we believe there's a force or an intelligence within us that will control us and make us work. Functional, that's more of how we look at the system. So function means I look at the function of the system and understand the function is going to determine the outcome. Instead of you have this dysfunction, go back. So that's why people will come in and they'll go, well, I've already had an EEG done. I'm like, yeah, but they didn't look for ratios that tell me the function of anxiety. They looked for, do you have seizures? Do you have a brain tumor? No, then we're fine. So the functional objective is going to look at it differently. When we look at functional medicine, our ranges are actually usually smaller because that tells us where health is. Whereas a Western medical range is bigger because they're actually allowing disease to exist there until you completely fall apart. Example is early functional Parkinson's. The first sign is loss of smell of peppermint and coffee. That will show up 20 years before you get the shake. So that's a functional assessment instead of, well, we'll just wait and watch. Oh, you got Parkinson's? Well, now we can put you on a painkiller, but we're not going to be able to stop it because now we have so much decay, it's not going to get any better. So it's look at it before it gets bad. So pre-Parkinsonian instead of you have this, now we can't do anything. Make sense? Cool. So I want to thank you all for being here and have a blessed night.
Thank you, Doc.